It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we begin a Wednesday, Gary, how are you?
Well, got to start with this audio cut.
All right.
And this audio cut here that we wish to play, again, is a greeting. And it's the only way to have this greeting. Are you ready?
All right.
Here we go.
Afternoon, everybody. No!
Yeah.
So sad.
Yeah. George Wendt passed away.
One of the best relatable characters in American television history.
Yeah. He was on, it wasn't too long ago. I want to say it was within the last several months. He was on a podcast with Ted Danson and Woody Harrelson.
I saw that.
Yeah. They're doing a part of Conan O'Brien's media group, doing a podcast. And Woody Harrelson and Ted Danson, and he was on there. Yeah, really sad. Great character. One of the great characters of television from that era. I mean, it was just a great character.
He was in every episode, by the way.
Yeah,
every episode. Well, he had to be because he had to walk through the door at the beginning.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
My favorite. Everybody. I mean, the normisms were all over the place.
Yeah.
I woke up when I woke up at 10 o'clock. I was late getting out because I was just reading so many of them, and I just remember my favorite when he walks in and I forgot who asked it, whether it was Woody was there or it was still Coach. It's like what you up to, Mr. Peterson? My ideal weight if I was 11 feet tall.
Yeah.
I just always love it.
Yeah.
And everybody has all of them. The one, what's shaking, Mr. Peterson? It was something like, my chin and all four of my chins and whatever. I mean, it was just, he was just so great. But the thing for me is growing up. Now, I grew up in the suburbs, but as I've always talked about, my best friend, his father owned a corner bar in the city. Mm-hmm. And the bar around the corner from that, even before I was able to drink, I mean, this is when bars, they made food and you went in there for, Friday night fish fries and everything else. There was a guy that had his own seat. He was in the same place every single day from the time that probably I was a teenager until I got into my 40s. And he held that place at the end of the bar. His name was Ron, but as soon as first time I saw Norm on Cheers, that's who I thought of.
Yeah.
And I went, okay,
yeah.
And that's the relatability of it. Everybody knew somebody. If you grew up in a city and around a corner bar that used to be all over the place, and it was, they just didn't serve alcohol. Great food, the elderly ladies in the back in the kitchen cooking, and it was. Again, it was sad to hear that. Just sad because just such a great character. But
it was.
We need to start the show by mentioning that. Interesting day though yesterday.
Yeah,
as they all are.
Very interesting day. The president making rounds on Capitol Hill. The GOP is united. Sorry, Mr. President, they're not, and I know that because you're on Capitol Hill, talking to them. It's which, by the way, should be done. It's something he has to do. We talked about this since the beginning. It's really up to him to whip the votes for his agenda. That's the case with any president. But I think this president certainly knows that. The question is, ultimately, what is the agenda when it comes to this bill? Are we going to get in control of our fiscal house, or at least show that we care to even look that direction?
Well,
or are we going to keep spending?
Well, it's being promoted two ways that I believe is disingenuous of the Republican Party, and that's first that we're all united to put this bill together to do what?
Right.
Republicans are saying we want to give tax cuts to specific demographics, I think Chip Roy and others are coming out and even saying this isn't pro-growth tax cuts. If you want pro-growth, this isn't it. You're just targeting certain demographics,
right?
Because the president made a promise for it,
right?
And
you're not focused on marginal rates. You're focused on you're cherry picking groups,
right? You're not. It's not a pro-growth kind of situation that you're looking at. But the other thing is they just complete what the Republicans right now. The messaging to me is, hey, we can spend more than we pay for.
Yeah.
And that's a great thing.
Mm-hmm.
And look at this. We're getting this done and this done and this done and this done. And the president's promises are being fulfilled. What about the president's biggest promise ever during the first term where he said he would solve the debt and deficit problem?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've got no problem with him going after the president going after the SALT caucus.
Yeah, right.
Because the SALT, you want a law that's unfair. It's SALT.
Right.
Because what it does is it puts the burden on people across the country. The president's absolutely right here. It puts the burden of bad policy of the liberal states.
Yep.
It puts the burden, it enables them to continue doing it and puts more of a burden, tax burden, on the states that are more responsible.
Right.
And are not taxing their people to death.
Right. People outside those states actually are the ones who have to take that on a greater level.
Right. But the entire thing is, and I have no problem, if you want to give tax cuts, fine. But you cannot have a bill. Republicans, it's all gone. The fiscal problems will never be solved. This thing passes, and it increases the baseline $5 trillion over 10 years.
Yeah.
From what we are right now, it increases the debt $5 trillion more.
Right.
And this is supposed to be celebration for Republicans because, hey, we're Republicans and we can spend like crazy and we can pile up more debt and we're giving you your tax cuts because we promised certain demographics would give you your tax cuts. And that's victory for the Republicans?
We've seen this monster before. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's kicking that can down the road because 10 years from now, many of them will not be in office.
Did they vote on it? They were supposed to vote on it by midnight.
I have to double check that. Haven't seen.
Yeah, I haven't seen. Let me go to the Hill.com. I just didn't see any breaking news on it at all. Let me go to the Hill.com because they're the ones that would probably first have it. Okay, I can't get into it. It won't let me in.
They're probably shut down with people trying to.
I don't think so. No,
I don't see anything.
You don't see anything on it? Okay. Did they delay it?
Maybe they Tom delayed it.
Okay, Johnson Salt Republicans zero in on critical agreement.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Speaker Mike Johnson and moderate Republicans have zeroed in on an agreement for the state and local tax deduction cap. 3 sources told The Hill, solving the critical hang-up. The proposal would increase the SALT deduction cap to $40,000, quadruple the current $10,000 cap for individuals making $500,000 or less in income, 3 of the sources said. One source of the level would increase 1% over the next 10 years. Is that 1% every year? Yeah, 1% a year over 10 years. Said they would continue to increase the SALT cap deduction.
Yeah.
Jeez. While several members of the SALT caucus are supportive of the plan, according to sources, Johnson will need to sell the proposal to hardline conservatives, including many in the House Freedom Caucus, who have been resistant to significant hike to the deduction cap. Exiting a meeting in the Speaker's office Tuesday night, members of the SALT caucus said they did not yet have a firm deal, but signaled significant progress. One of the committees was supposed to pass it tonight. It was they talked about a midnight vote.
Right. Was that the budget committee?
I think so.
Yeah.
We weren't even in the same universe a couple of days ago. We're on the same ball field now. Still, the agreement between Johnson and the SALT caucus is a massive step towards passing the party's big, beautiful bill. The Speaker and moderate Republicans from high blue tax states struggled for weeks to find consensus on the issue. Elise Stefanik, who was considering a run for governor from New York, stepped in to become a more active part of the negotiations. Sources said that she told Johnson that he had to move on the $30,000 figure, which she said was insulting in a joint statement. As far as I'm concerned, Stefanik, you've lost my support.
Yeah. Yeah.
By saying that's insulting, by saying that because you come from a high-tax state, that states that are way more responsible in their budget and fiscal dealings than New York, and you call it insulting because you believe other people should back the bad policies of your state is absolutely reprehensible. Absolutely reprehensible. If you came out and said, look, we're going to need the votes, we need to do this, we don't like it, but we need to do it.
At least you'd be honest.
At least you'd be honest. But saying like it's insulting, like New York, Illinois, and California are owed.
Well, but
because of their bad fiscal policies, are owed a bailout from the federal government. Give me a break. You're no damn Republican conservative that in any world that I've ever come from.
Well, we go back to when we were talking about this in Trump's first term. Senator Rand Paul.
Yeah.
We need to be in this, shift in direction that he took. We need to consider our friends in those blue states. Now, I believe he was referring to Republican friends in those blue states. But you're no different. Of course, we looked in his state, and of course, the SALT tax was also a huge political impact. It didn't have zero impact when it comes to red states. The problem is when you lift that cap, it becomes totally lopsided in those blue states because of the policies in those states. Well,
and you encourage them to more irresponsible fiscal policies.
Exactly. I wonder if that, that 1% per year, was it, increase? Is that going to satisfy the SALT caucus? Because they were asking for as much as, what was it, 124%? I mean, 124,000 rather.
Yeah. Now, this too. I mean, Breitbart. And Breitbart does a really pretty good job most of the time. Look at this. One big, beautiful bill holdouts previously lauded the bill's spending cuts. Republicans withholding support from President Trump's trademark legislation over spending concerns reportedly praised spending levels Trump bill cut levels that Trump's bill achieves and surpasses. It's not those specific cuts. They're making it sound like that they're being hypocrites and backing off the cutting part of it. It's
right.
not.
No.
It's the spending part of it.
Right.
Absolutely disingenuous article here from Breitbart.
Yeah. I mean, is everybody just wearing blinders?
Yep. Yeah.
Walking through this whole thing?
Yep. Pretending it's something that it is not.
Right. Insane.
Yeah.
By the way, we are doomed. If we can't get it together after the entire DOGE thing came about, then we're not going to get it together.
As we said, DOGE is dead.
Yeah, it's over.
Except for the part where they talk, where they look and go, okay, we need to modernize, these things. But on the whole cut thing, all Republicans out there, you were fed a load of horse manure.
Yeah, DOGE will be good in bringing government computers into the 90s. That'll be...
But as for all the things, $2 trillion, $1 trillion, all these, and we said it back then, and we were criticized for it. And we're right. None of that appears.
No.
None of that appears at all in this budget.
Nope.
It doesn't and that's a 10-year budget. This isn't like, okay, well, it's just a budget, maybe next year's budget. This is the 10-year outline for the budget.
Yeah.
And Republicans have said that's why you're hearing nothing about DOGE. You're hearing absolutely nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, nothing at all.
You're not hearing anything about the cuts anymore. That's gone.
Yep.
You're not hearing about the $5,000 check. Stop, Republicans, stop bullcrapping your own constituents.
Yep. And they're doing it because they know they can get away with it.
Yep.
Where's the massive amount of rank and file Republican voters that are on the phones?
They're not
trying to shut this thing down.
They're not.
It's not happening.
Yeah, they don't care. I mean, we said it before when people would always say, "Look, Congress isn't doing what the people want." Actually, they do. What the people
they
want.
are. They are doing it.
You know, and I'll find the audio cut. There was one audio cut of a Republican congressman saying, the people do care about cuts. Maybe you get some calls from people do, but the vast majority, this is not. I've been doing this now since 1989. And if anybody consents, because that was the first issue when I became a talk show host that I encountered, the first big issue back in 89, and it was the whole clean sweep thing where you had Republicans. There were Republicans on a Saturday morning outside all offices, including Republican offices, with a clean sweep. You got to get the budget, down. And there were rallies held all over the country. I was part of the rally when I was working in my first radio job, in my first talk radio job in Niagara Falls, New York. There are probably 100 of our listeners out there. And it was a small radio station that I started.
Yeah. Well, that's a pretty good turnout.
Yeah, it was a great turnout. It was hilarious because they all these
they all had brooms.
There was the steps of the congressional office that went up, and there's like 10 of these tax cutting. Most of them were women that were there doing it with the. It wasn't a sexist thing. They brought their own brooms.
Yes, right.
They were not. What was the thing to the patriarchy? They were not.
Yeah, they were not.
They were not being subservient to the patriarchy.
Yes, right, exactly.
They did it on their own volition. But it was so funny. I remember laughing so hard when they called me and said, you got to show up for this.
Yeah.
Your new talk show host, the debt's a problem back then.
Right.
You don't have anything like that today. When was the last, probably the last time was the Tea Party, right?
The Tea Party or TARP. TARP 1.
Right. Okay. Well, TARP 1 was before. TARP 1 is what helped the birth of the Tea Party.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
the Tea Party came after.
Yeah. Right.
So the last thing I really can think of is, some of the Tea Party protests.
So the very last one, probably, right about that time, which April of 2009?
Yep.
Wow.
We got a great show ahead. 866-90 Red Eye.
Hey there, Hope Savara here with Mother Trucker Yoga, and this is your health tip of the day. Healthy driver, healthy diesel, powered by House. Neck strain can really be a pain, especially after long hours behind the wheel. Did you know neck pain affects nearly 70% of drivers at some point in their career? So let's loosen things up. Sit tall and tip your head to your right shoulder. Now pull your left shoulder down gently and hold for 10 seconds. Switch sides, left ear to left shoulder, right shoulder pulls down and hold for 10. Now roll your shoulders 5 big circles forward and 5 back. Open your mouth wide and stretch your jaw. Hold for 10. Close and repeat that 2 more times. Finally, take a deep breath in through your nose, pause, and exhale through your mouth. There you go. Small, simple changes lead to big results so that you can feel good again. Visit mothertruckeryoga.com and houseproducts.com for more info.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Crony, and I'm Gary McNamara. Representative Mike Lawler, who's been one of them from New York, was on Fox News this past weekend, and he actually told the truth on it. He basically said, we need to do this. He said, remember, we won these seats in New York and California. That gave us the majority. If we want to keep these seats, we have to bail out the high-tax blue states. It's irresponsible what they're doing, but if we want to survive, we have to become liberals.
Yep.
And redistribute income from the rich to the poor.
Yep.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. I want to play this audio cut. This is a couple of days ago from Representative Mike Lawler explaining. He's one of the pro-SALT people. And here he is explaining. And there's a bit of honesty in here.
Yeah.
Where he talks about the fact that our states are horribly run, but we all got elected. And he's giving the message, and since we got elected and we helped create the majority in California and New York, you need this if you want to keep the majority.
Right.
You need to bail out the blue states in order to keep the majority. Here it is.
From 2020 and 2022, we flipped 10 seats in New York and California. We have a 5-seat majority. And so it was New York and California that delivered the majority. Obviously, 2 states, we can all agree, poorly run by 2 terrible Democratic governors and supermajorities in the state legislature that have passed insane legislation, increased spending. In New York, they've increased spending by $100 billion in a decade. We have the highest tax burden in the country. In my district, 3 of the 4 counties that I represent, Maria, are 3 of the top 16 highest property tax counties in America. So when you take property taxes combined with state income taxes, it blows well past the $30,000 cap, which is why this matters so much. And my point at the end of the day is if no bill passes, the SALT cap goes to unlimited. Now, it would also be tied to the AMT coming back in full force, and that would be terrible for New York. But for us to agree to a cap, there's got to be real relief to the middle class. And that's what we're negotiating on. We're not trying to stop the bill from proceeding. We're trying to make sure that our constituents get real tax relief.
And so when you look at this bill, you look how reports are they're increasing it to $40,000, and there's really no overall tax cuts. We're not spending less. We're not spending the rate of inflation, increasing it $5 trillion. What the Republicans are saying is we cannot win. This is the political message they're sending is we cannot win unless we make a bill that Democrats love, that they won't vote for. So the burden's all on us. That's where the Republican Party is.
That's the insanity.
Right now. Here it is. This is from National Review. Ideally, there would be no SALT deduction in the federal tax code because it creates a system in which some Americans pay more than others for the same federal government. SALT is unfair because it rewards the citizens of irresponsible states and punishes those in responsible jurisdictions. SALT is perverse, and because it shields taxpayers in progressive areas from the consequences of their political preferences. SALT incentivizes dysfunction and free riding because, in practice, SALT is a national subsidy for the blue state model. One can understand why Democrats would favor its extension, but the Republicans, with his characteristic bluntness, President Trump said on Tuesday, we don't want to benefit Democratic governors. And why would he? The Republican ideal of a government is Florida, not New York. It would be preposterous if come 2029, the main legislative achievement of the Republican federal trifecta has been to force Floridians to send cash to New Yorkers and thereby to save the ailing Democrats from themselves. Without SALT, the voters of New York, New Jersey, California, and elsewhere would be on the hook for the taxes that they approved. With SALT, they will not only be inoculated against the pain, they will get to send the bill to everybody else. But at least Lawler's being honest.
Yeah.
Well, we won these districts. In order to win the districts, we have to become liberals.
Yeah.
That's the message of this. That's the message I get from this bill.
Right.
And I know it's going to be, well, we just can't do it right now. I've been hearing that since 1989.
It's been going on for decades, this attitude of, well, we got some of what we want.
What?
Really? Really?
Anyone.
We made some progress. What progress?
Anyone. If it's an accomplishment for the Republicans to say, we've got this big, beautiful bill, and you know what the beautiful is of it? We're able to give tax cuts to people. We're able to spend way more than the baseline that was created really by Democrats over the last 4 years,
Right.
and we're going to spend $5 trillion more over the next 10 years, and that's beautiful, and you should love it. And if you're not, well, then you're a rhino.
Yes.
Because rhinos are not rhinos are fiscal conservatives.
Right.
You're only a true Republican if you're a Democrat. That's the message I get from the Republican Party. You're useless to me.
It's, it's been going on for so long. It's what I've been saying for a while now. Zero confidence that the Republicans are going to get it done. When DOGE started and, then it was tied to Capitol Hill, members of Congress, I said, why? Why are you doing this?
You did say that. And I was like, well, because remember,
Yeah.
and I had to admit the other day, I was wrong and Eric was right.
Well,
because I said, well, no, Eric, since they're going to have the cuts, you're going to need the Republicans in Congress to implement those cuts. Therefore, it's necessary and blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Shut up, Gary.
That it assumes all along that the Republicans were actually going to do something about it, and they're not.
Nope.
And here we are again, where nothing has changed. Nothing. Greatest political comeback in American history, and we'll be further in debt, which is the greatest problem we face. Much to the dismay of John Kerry, it's not climate change. The future rests on this growing debt that we refuse as a nation to solve. The future of this nation, when it comes to national security, is now on less solid ground because we refuse to solve our national debt. All of this is in play. Everything is in play because when the crash finally happens, and tell me what would turn it around in our lifetime, nothing will turn it around. It will have to be a very unnatural disaster of reaching a point, that threshold of not being able to service the interest on the national debt. And we will get there. At some point, as a nation, we'll get there. I don't know when, but we will, because there is nothing else politically that is going to be done about it. And then it's going to be this massive implosion and programs will just go away.
And it's again, I understand the politics of it, but to come out as they did and talk about DOGE and the money that they were talking about, $2 trillion we're going to save and $1 trillion, and then it was $4 billion a day we're currently saving right now, and you and I did the easy figuring. That's almost $1.5 trillion, and a year, not over 10 years,
right.
A year, and we went, oh my God,
that's not going to affect anyone. Remember that,
right? And you and I went, really? And it was less than 2 weeks later, all of a sudden it was $150 billion,
right?
Which now will be closer to $100 billion, which now will be actual zero when it comes to the overall bill and whether there is any spending cuts. There are none. We're not talking the rate of inflation. We're talking adding on an average $500 billion over the next, is it $500 billion?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
$500 billion over the next 10 years of additional spending on the baseline each and every year.
Right.
If you take the average of it.
Right.
And we're supposed to celebrate that. Because the Republicans can spend more and borrow more, and that's now the definition of beautiful for Republicans.
Yeah.
And that's such a tough thing to get to. Such a tough thing. Spending more, borrowing more. God, that was tough. You don't know how it was in order to get to the point of spending more, borrowing more. And that's a great success for the Republican Party. Let's all celebrate the hard work that we all put in. Shut the hell up.
Hand the gavel over to Hakeem Jeffries.
Yeah.
Because you will eventually.
Just amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it's, again, not a shock. highly predictable. The GOP in modern times has done little to slow this down. Welfare reform was tapping the brakes. As great as the class of 94 was, and the things that they did they were monumental. They're still talked about. I heard it mentioned on the radio just moments ago. But the class of 94 is so 1994. Welcome to the new age.
Yeah. We're never going to get it under control.
When people have been saying for years that the two parties are very different, well, on fiscal matters, they're very much the same. On fiscal matters,
cultural issues it's different. But
on fiscal matters, it's a pretty good blend.
Yeah. If Democrats now are 60% out of 100%, if Democrats are 60% of the problem, Republicans are 40%.
Yep.
They're getting closer.
Yeah.
When it comes
to spending.
Right. And I know Republicans, I know probably you don't like it, but we're not lying. You know we're telling you the truth on this.
Right. Again.
And it was wrong for them to come out. I mean, that's the other thing too, the boastfulness of DOGE.
Yeah.
$2 trillion, $1 trillion. You're gonna $5,000 checks you're gonna get.
Mm-hmm.
The DOGE dividend. What a line of horse manure.
Complete garbage.
We talk about BS from Democrats. I don't know. I'm sure they have. I mean, the whole Biden cover up. Yeah.
No.
But that was a load of BS that the Republicans threw at you.
Well, I'll tell you this.
And Elon Musk.
Right.
Elon Musk was the one that was started promoting it. And then remember the DOGE check. Everybody's going to get a $5,000. When will we get the $5,000 check? An analysis from the media says the $5,000 check. It's not coming.
Not going to happen. If you're going to believe in that, you should go back to hope and change.
Yeah. So.
And see what shows up at your door.
Get mad at us. You guys need to be in line. No, we don't.
Oh, hell no. I'm too old and too tired for that.
I'm too exhausted.
I'm not getting in line with anybody. All of you get out of my yard.
Now some, and who knows, you never know my motivation. My motivation, maybe I'm ticked off because I didn't get to I didn't get mine.
That's right. You didn't get your Social Security tax cuts.
I didn't get my Social Security tax cuts. No,
right. Way to go.
No taxes on Social Security.
Proving once again the Republicans hate old people.
We know the $4,000 deduction, but it would have been greater having no taxes on Social Security.
Yeah,
but it would have, since I plan to continue working, it wouldn't have affected me anyway.
Exactly.
I would have been outside the parameters.
Right.
But
it certainly makes you want to quit, doesn't it?
As Charlie Brown's, I think it was Charlie Brown's, or was it Linus's younger sister? Maybe it was Charlie Brown's. All I want is what's coming to me. All I want is my fair share.
Yeah. Yeah.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. The whole Biden thing, we'll get to that because more of that out there. The interesting thing is that, what we've heard over the last couple of days is, because the U.S. Preventative Services Task Force recommends against routine PSA testing for men age 70 and older. And the first question I asked is why? My doctor's never told me that.
No, I've never heard that.
I've never heard that. Now, I was reading from Harvard Medical Center, they said back in 2022, this should be reconsidered. Why would you do this? It's simply part of a blood test. You give blood, you get your blood work,
right.
You simply take it. Why wouldn't you want it? And they're like, well, you have a reduced life expectancy anyway. Well, that doesn't mean you shouldn't get it.
Right.
This doesn't make any sense. It's because in older men, especially those over 70, there's a higher likelihood of other competing causes of death that might outpace the potential benefits of treating prostate
Then
cancer.
why have any exam?
Right.
I mean, because it's like saying, well, anything could happen.
Well, they're saying, well, they're actually saying, well, it's not recommended because there are other things that may kill you. That's not a reason.
Right.
What type of idiocy is that?
You could die a million different ways.
Right.
Drive safely. I mean, what the hell? Seriously.
PSA tests can lead to identification of slow-growing, non-aggressive prostate cancers that may not require treatment.
Right.
Well, you deal with that when you come to it. That's
Right.
not a reason not to get tested or include it in the test.
Right.
It's not like the test costs $10,000.
Right. Exactly.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. It's really interesting as just, doing research since the story came out about, the one medical group doesn't recommend, regular PSA tests for men over the age of 70. And I went, where the hell did that come from?
Right.
And I started thinking, when I got my we won't go into specifics. When I got my last colonoscopy, they told me it might be my last one. But what are you talking about? They said, if we don't find anything, any polyps, whatever, it's recommended 10 years. You'll be at that point where you no longer recommend it. But I'd want it.
Yeah.
My grandfather died of colon cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's the whole point is, because when I asked my doctor about it, he said, well, because it would take, 3, 4, 5 years, once, you have your last exam for the polyps to appear, and then, the possibility of cancer, it would be, 4 or 5 years, and by that time you'll be dead because you're in your 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
or not.
And I said, or not, and they're making the same case with the PSA test. Again, we're not talking about something that takes $10,000.
Right. Yeah.
You're talking about something that's just part of your normal blood work.
Right.
That you get once a year. And it's something that most men pay attention to. You made a great point. If you reach 80 years old and, the lifespan of a man's, 76, whatever. But if you reach 80 years old, your lifespan is not 81 or 82 at that point.
Right.
If you're a healthy 80-year-old.
Right.
It's if you're a healthy 80-year-old, it's longer than that. But I use my dad as an example. My dad, his PSA kept going up and up and up and up.
Mm.
It wasn't prostate cancer. It was an enlarged prostate. He eventually had, because he continued getting the PSA test, and then he had problems, with urination because it was getting so big, it was blocking off the bladder. That could have killed him.
Mm.
And so they had to go and remove most of his prostate.
Yeah.
They actually had, when he was 86 years old when he did it, and still, he's alive today at 99.
Yeah.
But, it really, really, monitoring that helped him. But they're saying here, when I'm reading, the reason it's not recommended, because something else may kill you. What? What the hell are you talking about? That's not a... Well, of course something else could kill you. You could be in an automobile. Well, I want to go to the doctor checkup, but I'm driving a lot the next year, so that's probably going to kill me, so I'm not going to get a checkup. It's just... And so I'm...
It's like all the people who quit drinking out of plastic bottles and still eat chicken McNuggets.
Or Can I get that triple Whopper, large fry, and please make it a no sugar Diet Coke.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing was they said, and it can mean something else. If you go up, and as my doctor said, goes, what you look for example, he said, in my PSA, if it skyrockets, like in a period of a year, if it skyrockets, then you'd want to get it checked out because it could be something. And they're saying, yeah, but the digital test is invasive. I don't care.
Well, technically, medical exams are invasive.
Right.
Taking your blood is invasive. I mean, I know what they're saying. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah. That's okay. I can compartmentalize and say, it's okay, do it. I want to know if there's a problem.
Yeah.
And so it was, so when I saw that, well, it might not be cancer, it could be something else, and you have to go through an invasive procedure to find that out. But I like information.
That's actually the entire reason you're getting an exam in the first place. Why would anything else in the exam matter then?
So here's the New York Post, a long-serving aide to Biden, what he said after this story came out. Because they have White House physician Kevin O'Connor, a longtime friend of the Bidens, made no mention of performing a PSA in his report on Biden's most recent physical exam while president conducted in February of 2024. Remember, the last one they know of was February of 14. He goes, I think the likely scenario, knowing Kevin O'Connor pretty well, is that they had a discussion on what a PSA test is, and they decided not to do one because it would likely be elevated and cause a story since a lot of older men have high PSAs that are false positives. If that's true, did anybody give a damn about the life of Joe Biden that was around him?
Right. We won't do one because it'll cause a story.
Yeah.
We don't want stories. Imagine your doctor saying that, just saying that to a regular person. This could get out. People might talk.
Gary, something? If we discover something, have to go after it. You might miss some time at work.
Right. Paparazzi might get hold of it.
The paparazzi.
I mean, seriously, what the hell? This sounds like an excuse that an adolescent is making to their parents.
I'm waiting for my doctor to recommend to say, look, you don't need to watch your carb intake because you're old.
Right.
And therefore, since you're old, you
should just go for it.
Just go for it. Eat whatever you want. Do whatever you want.
Yeah.
Because you have had no damage from type 2 diabetes to any of your organs yet.
Right.
Everything looks fine.
Yeah.
So it takes really 15 years to die the horrible death that you can get from type 2 diabetes.
Right.
So go eat whatever you want now.
Right.
Because odds are something else is going to kill you.
Right.
I haven't got that advice from my doctor yet.
Not yet.
Drink all the soda pop. Quadruple the amount of sugar. You work overnights. It'll keep you up.
Have a Snickers.
Have a Snickers. I do love the Snickers bar. Remember the commercial where the guy's like an animal? He's like crazy and wild. They get a Snickers bar and he becomes normal again.
Yeah.
You go through and, like I said, I love my doctor. My doctor's a kind of doctor that when you go in, he's not in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes through point by point the chemistry of everything. If I want to know something, he'll go through the chemistry. He goes, "Did you take chemistry?" Yes. He goes, and if I don't, I go, explain it in more layman terms for me. What do you mean by this, and what happens here, and this, and this, and this, and this?
Right.
And we've done it on, everything. And like I said, my PSA was just slightly elevated. I mean, from a 0.97 to I think a 1.29 or something it was.
Right.
Which is still in the complete, total safe zone. But it was like, we'll watch it, see what happens. He goes, now what you worry about is if you come back in a year from now and it goes from a 1.3 to a 5, then I would suggest, that there's more of an exam on that. And I would agree with that. I wouldn't be saying, no, doctor, because I've taken up a lot of smoking and drinking, and I think lung cancer or cirrhosis of the liver is going to get me first.
Or treat it like a therapy session. Doctor, our hour is up. We'll just have to do that next time. What? That's not how it works. You know, I mean, it's like, nah, I got things to do. I mean, it's the entire purpose of being there.
I mean, is it a waste of time? I mean, not now, but the next time I go to the dentist, they do the cancer screening. Should I get the cancer screening? Because I think I'm older. Yes, I'm older than when Uncle Leo started on Seinfeld.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that's why I steal stuff and shoplift from stores. You have to watch Seinfeld in order to understand that one.
Right.
So,
you're older than
you know how
Abe Vigoda ever was.
I'm older. Let's have a Cheers reference.
Yeah.
I am older than when Coach died, the character, I can't think of his name. Oh, the moment. Colasanto, I can't think of his last name.
Yeah.
When he died, I'm older than when he died. He died at like 63.
Yeah.
Remember Coach?
Right.
He was 63.
Yeah.
He looked a lot older than 63.
Abe Vigoda was only 50 in The Godfather.
Is he still alive?
Probably.
You have to ask that question.
Yeah. What was it? What was the famous line? The stories about my death have been greatly exaggerated. Yeah. I think he passed away years ago.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He
at the age of 240.
2016, he passed away, 94.
Yeah.
94 years of age.
Yeah.
Yeah,
he was always old, though. I mean,
yeah, he was.
Because if you think about it, really it was The Godfather. Sorry, can't do it, Sally.
Oh, man. Why'd you bring that up? That's a sad. I didn't want him to get.
I know.
I didn't want him to get whacked.
Yeah.
Oh. Granted, he betrayed Michael, but come on.
Come on.
Give him a break.
Save Vigoda.
When he said, what did he say? Like for old time's sake or whatever?
Yeah.
Sorry, can't do it.
Sorry, can't do it, Sally.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Yeah,
that's the difference.
Crazy.
I would have at least taken a run for it since I was outside and tried to get near the gate so somebody would see the shooting or whatever.
Yeah. They much of the cast and crew were laughing at Al Pacino in his first days on that set.
Oh, yeah.
They were mocking him.
Yep, I know that. Yep.
And he wrote about it in a book, and he said, finally, what he was trying to do is slowly evolve the character to the point of the character then becomes because Michael wasn't really the point at that point, early in the storyline. And then he kind of comes out of the background, and all of a sudden he's the Godfather, but reaching that point has to be slow because you have to look at it and go, whoa, I wasn't looking for that. I wasn't expecting
that. Was one of the best, elevations or excuse me, elevations. He evolved as a character.
Yeah.
You think about it in the trilogy, even
right.
Godfather 3 that a lot of people didn't like.
Mm-hmm.
When I watched it, I said, no, you needed it because it made sense. Because it showed that everything that he had done in his life really didn't work out at the end.
Right.
And losing his daughter getting killed instead of him. I mean, it was almost like, okay, that's justice, and then dying alone and all that.
Right.
It was like
crime
doesn't, you go through the entire thing, and finally at the end, after 90 hours of the trilogy, you're like, oh, crime doesn't pay.
Right.
Oh, did I have to watch the whole thing to figure that one out?
Exactly. Right. You could have done that in 2.
But when you look at it, I'm just like this medical advisor even here. Well, we thought it would be high, so we didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Do these people do they not care? And if he had the conversation with Biden in 2024, was Biden even, had the cognitive ability to even understand what he was talking about?
Right.
How many people pushed him in a particular direction would be the whole thing. But man, it blew up again. This is just blowing up. Everything is blowing up.
Well, it is because, again, they're trying to lead you to believe that they weren't on top of a president's health. So there's two possibilities: that they weren't, and holy cow, why? Or they were, and they're lying about it now.
Yeah.
Those are your possibilities. Because really it comes down to, in terms of cognitive issues and where we're going with this entire thing, we don't want, first of all, we don't want the former president or anybody to suffer with a disease like that. I don't want anybody to go through that. I have two family members right now that are dealing with cancer and have been battling since, each of them, in fact, for a number of years, a couple of years for one of them. And I don't want that for anybody. But it has to be asked. If the treatment caused any cognitive issues, that would give us a timeline of those cognitive issues and how those were handled in terms of his authority as then President of the United States. These are all valid questions that the American people deserve an answer to. And it's as simple as that. So there's a good reason to come up with all of these excuses that, again, sound like an adolescent trying to dance around their parents thinking they're going to get away with it. It's very important that we get all of the answers about who was in charge during his presidency, and were any decisions made outside of presidential authority.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Uncompensated detention at docks frustrates drivers of all stripes. If you're an owner-operator, you have at least some control over the matter. Make the subject a standard part of your rate and/or contract negotiations on the front end. You can use your own numbers to calculate an hourly rate to compensate for lost income opportunity, as well as fixed costs, which don't stop when the truck stops. Those two elements of a fair detention rate were deemed appropriate by most of Overdrive's audience almost a decade ago. We've used income, fixed costs, and miles average of our owner-operator business services from ATBS's clients to compute an average $64 an hour detention rate then. And 10 years later, the figure is $83 an hour. Use your own numbers to calculate your rate. A simple conversation with any broker or shipper, or your carrier if you're leased, about what you're putting in the rate might yield results you don't expect. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. We got a ton of audio coming up on the entire Biden thing. There was so much that happened yesterday. This is Supreme Court on the whole Maine situation where that representative was censured. Well, yeah, she's got to be back on until that goes through the courts. Well, that's completely and totally ridiculous, and that was over the insanity of the radical transgender movement. We'll have more. If anything comes out of Capitol Hill, and I don't know if there's any more meetings tonight or whether they're done with it or not on the budget bill, we will get that to you. The entire birthright citizenship, the interesting article that I read yesterday that I thought was really, really interesting that we will get to. What else there was? You see Jon Stewart on Jake Tapper. We'll have some audio there. This is something that messed me up yesterday for a little bit.
Okay.
I didn't have my reading glasses on. And I really, really got excited for a moment. I went, really? I read it. Trump announces Golf Dome, a game changer to protect the American homeland. I went, Golf Dome? Golden Dome. I didn't have my reading glasses on when I read it, but I was like, what? Trump's not talking about building a golf dome? Even though I would like probably to go to that golf dome, I don't think we should be spending money on a golf dome. Put my reading glasses on. Golden Dome.
Oh, yeah. A golf dome, though, would be big and beautiful.
No, it would be, yes.
Yeah. So there's that.
But we
Yeah.
But we will get to that. Also, the governor of Maryland. Here's a headline. Wes Moore realizes slavery reparations is yesterday's fad. Ooh.
Wow.
So now reparations, even to Democrats, is a fad?
Wow.
Oh, boy.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Just reading here from the Wall Street Journal. This is the editorial page, the editors. The blood test isn't perfect. This is about Biden. And other doctors quoted in the press say they've had patients develop aggressive cancers like Mr. Biden despite clean PSA tests. Mr. Biden was 78 when he was sworn in as president. The U.S. Preventative Services Task Force currently recommends against PSA screening of patients 70 and older, saying the potential harms outweigh the benefits for a population that already has a heightened risk of mortality from all causes. They never say what the potential harms are. All I've seen as a potential harm is you might have to go to the next test.
I don't get it.
It makes no sense. It's not like what is something going to harm you if you have a high PSA that looking for it? Is there going to be any permanent damage? No.
Well,
there's not. It may be uncomfortable and inconvenient.
What a responsible doctor. I mean, are they trying to imply a responsible, which would be BS, by the way, if they were trying to imply this, that a responsible doctor would just go from a high PSA score, out of range PSA score, to treatment immediately, right, which would be harmful because they may not have cancer. Well, it doesn't work that way.
I know. Because the task force latest guidance issued in 2018 says many men with prostate cancer never experience symptoms and without screening would never know that they have the disease. In autopsy studies of men who died of other causes, more than 20% of men ages 50 to 59 years of age and more than 33% of men ages 70 to 79 were found to have prostate cancer. If they're saying that all prostate cancer isn't going to kill you, all cancer isn't going to kill you. Yet Mr. Biden wasn't your average 70-something. He was president of the United States, and he wanted voters to reelect him for another 4 years. Had he remained in the race and won, the country would now be contemplating a President Kamala Harris without having had an election choice. President Trump is 78. He received the PSA test as recently as last month, with the results disclosed by the White House. Did Mr. Biden discuss the PSA and decline it? If so, were his physicians okay with that? Fit for duty, the doctor certified in February of 2024. Mm-hmm. There's a long record of presidents who concealed their ailments, from Grover Cleveland's secret cancer surgery to Woodrow Wilson's incapacity after his stroke, John F. Kennedy's Addison's disease. Mr. Biden's White House hid the extent of his age-related decline until his June 27th, 2024 debate performance made it obvious to voters. That's bad enough, and it raised suspicions. Though he's no longer in office, the public-spirited thing for Mr. Biden to do is to clarify the details of his disease history and PSA choices. And it's true now. Let's get to The View. Because now the narrative is, the narrative started yesterday. The View was one of them that hit it. Well, why does this doesn't matter at all? What about what Trump is doing?
Uh-huh.
Here we go, all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
That's good.
So, should anonymous sources who talked to Tapper have spoken up about their concerns while he was in office, while he was still in office? And my other question is, why is this important to know now?
Yeah. Well, that's what some people want to know.
It just seems to me,
Yeah.
you know, we got a lot of stuff to be concerned about.
There you go.
Yeah, because, the actions of somebody who quite possibly was not authorized to take such actions during the Biden presidency because they were covering up Biden's cognitive issues.
Yeah, I mean, it
isn't important.
What it goes is to a shadow government. I was watching part of it was a long podcast. It took a long time to get anywhere between Mark Halperin and Morning Joe yesterday.
Yeah.
Where he confronted him on the whole, thing. Well, this is what I thought. I mean, it's
right.
really bad. It's really long and drawn out, though, the interview.
Mm-hmm.
But Halperin said, well, the Republicans that say he's completely incapacitated and can't make any decisions, nobody's ever said that.
No.
Everyone knows that by anyone who deals with any type of cognitive issues, we know it with our parents.
Mm-hmm.
They can be great, and different things can do it. We've talked about, because of my dad, whatever, how, a urinary tract infection like that in older people can send your mind into complete chaos.
Right. When your body is weaker and then all of a sudden you have to fight something, some kind of infection like that, it can, I'll tell you right now, it was a couple of weeks ago that I ran a fever, and it was the first fever I'd run at that level. I was up at 103 degrees.
Oh.
Yeah. And they talk about it being delirious from a fever because your body is working so hard. I wasn't to the point of being delirious, but I'm telling you right now, my brain wasn't working at 100%. Now, I know you're chuckling and saying, is it ever working at 100%? And the answer is no, and it's a fair point, but don't change the topic.
Yeah, like 110%.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I'm always giving you 10% more.
You're giving 10% more.
Yeah, I have to work harder than the average person.
Even though we're asking for 20%.
Exactly. I couldn't do that. And that's, that's the reality of that. And again, it's, of course you expected. I was actually the other night, I was actually going to say on the air because I was thinking it, just wait for it is the Schumer approach, right? We're moving forward. Well, let's talk about things that are going on now. No. Let's talk about the actions, each of them, that were taken during the presidential actions taken during the Biden years. Let's scrutinize each and every one of them to find out whether or not it was Joe Biden ultimately making that decision. The American people deserve those answers. And you know damn well that if there were concerns about Donald Trump's cognitive issues, remember, they keep trying to bring that about. Well, he's old too. He's old. And if there were great concerns about his cognitive issues, by the way, from his own side, because it's Biden's own side.
Yeah.
That is now, it's Jake Tapper writing the book. Jake Tapper, the authority on Joe Biden's cognitive issues since the day after the election.
Well, everything on Biden came from Democrats.
Yep.
It was Jake Tapper's book.
Yep.
And it's all the sources are people that were part of his administration. They're all Democrats. None of this is Republicans. It's all Democrat. But you mentioned it that, we'll try to deflect it Trump's way.
Mm-hmm.
Happened on CNN with Scott Jennings yesterday. Listen to this. Okay, here we go.
All right.
Actually, are you arguing that Joe Biden was fine during his
I'm not arguing that he was fine. I'm arguing that
you keep pivoting back to Trump, who's clearly fine. I'm just asking you if you're arguing that something was not wrong with Joe Biden.
I'm so glad you asked that question. Because Joe Biden is no longer the president.
But he was, and that's the story tonight.
Donald, stop. Let me finish what I'm saying, guys. Let me finish something. Donald Trump is the president of the United States. I would dearly love to see a cognitive test from him, because as somebody who's lived in the New York media market for the last 40 years, I can tell you that the Donald Trump that I knew in the 80s is not the Donald Trump that I hear today.
So your answer to the cover-up is Trump.
My answer is...
Your answer to every question is Trump.
My answer is
the cover-up is the story tonight.
The president
That's
of
the story.
Yes, the cover-up is also the president of the United States, who happens to be Donald J. Trump today, is not... Yeah, you could laugh all you want.
I am definitely laughing.
You know why you're laughing? Because
You're laughing.
We're going to...
That's a Julie Roginski, a Democratic strategist, saying Trump is having the cognitive problems just like
Biden. Yeah. Yeah, it is again, that has to be the attempt. Let's make it about Trump. Let's make it about Trump. Let's make it about Trump, because you can't I think many on the left and in the left activists and media, their alarms are going off. And it's to a large degree a result and a reaction to Jake Tapper's book.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't discount that. If you think about December of last year when the Wall Street Journal did that story, again, you've had other media and people on the right that have talked about it for years. And the left activist media fought you to defend him. And now what they're trying to do is leverage his recent diagnosis, if it indeed was recent, I'll say recently announced diagnosis, in order to do the how dare you, we should focus on things in the moment. We should review every single presidential action by Joe Biden, to ensure that it was he that actually made those decisions.
Yeah.
And we should look at, in fact, they should have everybody in his inner circle investigated to find out if any of those people who had no presidential authority did anything in his name to essentially change the lives of Americans, to govern the lives of Americans. Because one of the things they're missing here on the left, he's no longer president. Some of his presidential actions are still in place.
Well, the reason they say that is because they were the biggest enablers of something that was obvious.
Exactly.
They lived in the View. They lived in the bizarro world. Remember, this is The View. Understand what The View, from what I know, is the first American TV talk show ever where lawyers are watching it in real time for ABC to make sure that they don't defame anybody.
Right.
So, and they get sent notes, the legal notes when they have to correct something, and it's to the point now where they get irritated whenever they have to do it. But that's how bad they are with the truth.
Right.
Is that The View, any of you that watch The View and like The View, understand, I don't know of another American talk show on radio or TV ever. There may be one. It's not an excuse, but I still don't know of anyone. But they were so bad where they had to publicly announce, don't worry, we've got the lawyers watching every word they say to make sure they don't defame. Forget about lying. They're not even worried about the lying. They're worried about the defamation of character and the lawsuits that could come out and some of the ridiculous things that they have said before that aren't based in any type of truth whatsoever. So, of course, they're going to say, why are we going back? Because if you go back and look at it, all these people that defended the big lie look like idiots.
Yeah.
And they don't wish to look like the idiots that they are.
Right.
It's that simple with The View.
Right.
And we all know it. Why are they going back? Well, Trump's cognitive abilities. Trump isn't the same person that he was.
Yeah,
in the 80s. Yeah, he is.
Yeah, he is.
He's older.
Remember and again, it was a source story, to be clear, from the New York Post the other day about his trip to the Middle East. It's refreshing according to the sources in the story, these were a couple of the sources were Biden insiders.
Yeah.
Saying it's refreshing to see somebody who has the wherewithal and the stamina to be able to go over and do a trip like that. That's a clear difference, and everybody knows it.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. We've got so much audio, and we aren't even to Thursday yet. We're only to Wednesday, but it's just the whole Biden stuff just blowing up. I mean, we have the part of the Megyn Kelly interview with Jake Tapper, which is just great. I mean, it's just, oh my gosh. And the one thing for Jake Tapper is he's being eviscerated by a number of people. Is the fact, well, I should have, I feel humility, I feel this. Look, at the minimum, we know you supported Biden. We know you don't like Trump and you support Democrats. We know that up front, right?
Yeah,
that's not like something, new out there. So knowing that, at the minimum, you shouldn't be writing a book. You shouldn't be an anchor, because your observation skills of reality and cognitive decline of a person sucks, because the majority of the American people in 2021 believed that Biden and his cognitive abilities meant he should not be serving as president of the United States.
Right.
So at the minimum, you have no observational skills to be in the media at all.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you, as always, for being here. Wow, just let's just start playing audio, because there's just so much great audio, and so much of it is on the whole Biden thing and his cognitive abilities, the prostate cancer, the media coverage of it, the hiding of his cognitive abilities. This is from News Nation. This is the co-author with Jake Tapper, Alex Thompson, on News Nation. Here's a little bit of what he had to say.
When you were reporting this, did people in his inner circle, did those that you talked to, acknowledge that the media, were they surprised by how complicit the media was?
It was interesting. I had one conversation with someone. This was after the election, while we were reporting this book. This person said, listen, yes, we deserve blame for X, Y, Z. We were hiding him. This person also sort of got in my face, and they said, listen, the media deserves some blame too. Like, we were sort of amazed at some of the stuff we were able to spin reporters on. They in some ways,
it's like the bank robber complaining that the safe wasn't locked or something.
They're just like, you guys should not have believed us so easily. And I thought that was like a really interesting. But I also think that's true. I think the media, in a lot of ways, just was not skeptical enough and did not remember the lesson that they do it to different degrees, but every White House lies. I think
when you were
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing. Let's go back to CNN and Scott Jennings. I mean, it was a zoo last night. It was just great. Here we go.
And Alex, the fact of the fake town hall is not actually the worst part of the story that you report in the book.
Yes.
other campaigns have used fake town halls. Now, I would say those town halls usually are in addition to real town halls. Joe Biden was doing neither. This fake town hall was in order to film it so they could make it into campaign commercials. They filmed it in Delaware with supporters. But Joe Biden, at this point, this is the spring of 2024, Joe Biden's town hall, which was closed to press, was so bad that campaign officials determined that it was not usable for a campaign commercial. So they took 90 minutes, 2 hours out of the president's day. They filmed an entire town hall, and they determined that it was not usable. Now, some people say this was because Joe Biden was incoherent. He could not really articulate his thoughts in a pithy or even semi-normal way. Some people just said, like, the lighting was bad. That was sort of the 2 points of view. But the point is, it shows how what the campaign status was in the spring of 2024 when they were trying to deal with a candidate that wasn't a decline.
Wait, someone told you the lighting was bad?
That's one of the excuses.
You're saying that they spent millions of dollars to stage a town hall? Well, we didn't get the lighting right.
That was one of the excuses.
I mean,
Unbelievable.
and this comes back to the question of how many people were aware of things like that but said nothing?
Everyone.
Yeah.
I can answer that question.
All of them.
Everyone, because we were not at that town hall, the fake town hall, and we knew it.
Yep.
Who didn't know it?
Right.
That was Alex Thompson again. Now, this is Scott Jennings along with the panel with Jake Tapper on it also. Here we go.
Well, I do think there were some things that happened in 2020, 2021, 2022 that Republicans at the time were saying, maybe we got to take a look at this. And not a lot of people wanted to listen, truthfully. So that's number one. Number two, I think a lot of people have looked at this as a campaign issue. My takeaway and reaction to all this the entire time has been he was the president.
Yeah.
And this one comment in the book about how there was sort of a group of unelected people that were serving as a board that was sort of running the country, and he was at best a senior member of the board. That's not exactly what it says in the Constitution.
No, and that's from a cabinet secretary.
And
quote.
I mean this is not what you sign up for when you vote for the president of the United States, and it calls into question who was running the country on a day-to-day basis, were the policy decisions actually flowing from the president, and what responsibility does the Congress have now to go back in time and say, were these decisions legitimately made?
They have total responsibility to do that, to find out what happened, and we all know it. Yep, we all know it. It's that simple.
Yep.
Then we get to Megyn Kelly had on Jake Tapper the other day. All right, listen to some of this. Here we go.
You didn't ask him about it. You didn't follow up on the fact that he was falling up the stairs, that he was losing his train of thought regularly, that he was slurring, that he was incomprehensible, that he was getting lost on the White House lawn. You sat right across from him and you asked none of that, notwithstanding the fact that he had promised you he would be fully transparent about his health issues.
That's true. But I did ask him about his age and the fact that the American people had concluded that even though he said whenever anybody brought up the subject of his age, watch me. And I said, yes, they're watching you and they are concerned that you were too old for this job.
But you know as well as I do that there's a way of, you can say, hey, there's this poll on your age, or you could say, you just forgot that Jackie Walorski was dead. You asked where she was moments after watching a videotape tribute to her. You lowered the flags at the White House after she died. This happened 13 days before you sat with him. There is a way of pressing a man like that on the actual infirmities to bring it home to him and to the audience, and you didn't do it.
That's correct. I didn't. And like I said, I feel humility about my coverage. I mean, it's not like I was asking him his favorite movie or his favorite color. We were talking about Putin. We were talking about other issues of national importance. But yeah, I mean, of course, I've said I look back at my coverage with humility, and I wish I did cover the issues of age and acuity, but I wish I had covered them much more. And I wish, I mean, of course, it's May 2025. Do I wish that in that 10, 15-minute interview I had with Biden in October 2022, that this had been the only subject because I had then
Well, it
what I
wasn't
know
just that,
now.
though, Jake. It wasn't just that. I mean, you sat with him a couple of times in the course of his presidency, and these issues
No, I
were not
didn't.
pressed. Well, there was
No,
at least
I-
that time,
I-
and then there was the time at the beginning. And but separate and apart from that,
but Megan,
you
Megan, hold on,
covered the
hold on.
Biden's
I sat
presidency.
with-
No. Let me just finish my point.
I'm
You
just saying
covered the
I had
Biden
one interview with
presidency.
him during his. I had one
Okay,
interview
right,
with
and
him
it was
during the
13 days
presidency.
after the Jackie Walorski thing. But you covered the Biden presidency aggressively throughout the 4 years, and you didn't cover mental acuity.
And that's true. And then later on, she played, let me see if I can get it here. She played some of the audio of him. Here it is. Okay, this is right after, this is the segment right after that one. Here we go. All right.
You covered the Biden presidency aggressively throughout the 4 years, and you didn't cover mental acuity hardly at all. I mean, time and time again, when issues came up, you seemed to be running cover for the president.
I don't
You didn't seem
think that's
interested.
true.
Well, I mean, we'll start with the Laura Trump issue that you referred. Here it is. This happened in 2020.
Joe Biden, as we all know, has worked to overcome a stutter. How do you think it makes little kids with stutters feel when they see you make a comment like that?
First and foremost, I had no idea that Joe Biden ever suffered from a stutter. I think what we see on stage with Joe Biden, Jake, is very clearly a cognitive decline.
Okay.
That's what I'm referring to. It makes me uncomfortable
You are
to watch somebody on stage search for
that's so
questions.
amazing.
You're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I
a
think that you were
stuttering.
mocking his stutter.
Joe
Yeah,
Biden.
I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think you have absolutely no standing to diagnose somebody's cognitive decline.
And it's very concerning to a lot of people that this could be the leader of the free world.
Okay.
That is all I'm saying. I genuinely
Thank you,
feel
Laura
sorry
Trump.
for Joe Biden.
I appreciate it. I'm sure it was from a place of concern. We all believe that. Laura Trump, thank you so much.
Yeah, shut it down when it gets.
Do you want to apologize to Laura Trump now?
Yeah, this has been his approach, and keep in mind, he's a hero for writing the book after the election. He said it the other day, right after the election, the day after the election, we started writing the book. Why didn't you write it when everybody else was talking about it? Well, because it wouldn't have worked for your side. You were too busy defending Joe Biden and fighting anybody who had concerns about cognitive issues.
What's happening now is, whether it's Jake Tapper saying, I wish I had done it. Well, why didn't you? Why didn't you?
You were capable of it.
Right. You were capable. We all saw it.
Nobody
knew it.
buys nobody buys that you're remorseful over not doing it.
Yeah.
You did it for a reason. You took those positions for a reason, Jake Tapper.
Yep. We knew it. We said it. And why? Because we have experience in people that have relatives and other friends that have cognitive problems. We've dealt with it. America has dealt with it. People who have dealt with it know it and see it. And it's again where we get to the point where Democrats take positions that are against what is obviously self-evident. The radical transgender movement, their identity politics, judging people by groups and, by groups and not as individuals. It's self-evident what's going on, and they deny what is self-evident. And in the case of Biden, just another example, I know it's a different topic, but with Biden, the same thing. It was self-evident. Everybody knew that he should not be president of the United States, which means the people that dealt with him every single day knew it, and the people that covered him knew it.
Yep.
They all knew it.
Yep.
And they were all involved, and we played the News Nation one where Alex Thompson's talking about the fact that one of the senior aides to former President Biden said, yeah, but we were able to tell you guys anything, and you just bought it and went with it. We could tell you the most delusional thing out there, and you'd run with it. Exactly what we have said about the media, about the liberal media out there. Exactly what we have said they did is what they were doing. But this isn't about Republicans pounding on Biden. This was a book written by Jake Tapper, a well-known Democrat. All of his sources to this were Democrats.
Mm-hmm.
Now, finally, we did have somebody that questioned whether he should be writing a book that's sourced. Unfortunately, that person was a person of zero credibility, Whoopi Goldberg on The View.
Yep.
There's so much stuff. I mean, there's just.
Well, it really
great.
is. The left is imploding over this whole thing because they know the truth. The left is now at the point of taking the lead from, wow, what a turnaround for Chuck Schumer, huh? Whoopi Goldberg's taking the lead from Chuck Schumer now.
Well,
let's just move on. Let's move on. We're focused on the future. Let's just move on. We're just moving on. We're just moving on. Let's focus on now. That's a Chuck Schumer move. And it's thoughtless.
I think where you're wrong here. I think where you're completely wrong here.
Schumer's taking a Whoopi lead?
No. She's still more popular than he is.
Oh, no doubt. That's my whole point, actually. That's my whole point. Wow, the turnaround for Chuck Schumer. If they're taking the Chuck Schumer lead on this, that tells you how bad it is. That's my entire point.
Just greatness.
It's insane and getting more insaner.
It's insaner.
It is.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up following the bottom of the hour, more on just great audio. And a great point, something that we had made about Biden concerning Afghanistan when we said Biden lied about, what the general said,
right.
to him, that Biden outright lied. And Kayleigh McEnany yesterday on Fox News was saying maybe he really didn't know.
Yeah,
maybe he had no idea that, what the generals told him, that he was commander-in-chief and had no idea what the hell he was doing, what his own people were saying to him. And he's commander-in-chief of the forces that ended up getting, of the armed forces, which ended up getting 13 servicemen and women killed.
Mm-hmm.
And just completely botched up the complete withdrawal. We said at the point, he's a liar. She's saying, maybe he had no idea. Maybe he didn't remember.
Okay, so this relates to what Speaker Johnson said when he said, I met with him at one point last year, and we had a conversation about something, and I mentioned that he signed something, and he said to me, I didn't sign that.
Yeah.
And I don't think he was lying. Well, a couple of things. On that item, I forget what it was. Did he not actually sign it because AutoPen signed it? And if he doesn't remember it, then was his authority actually in play on that signing, that item? All of these questions, because when in terms of Afghanistan, think about how all of that played out. Who was in charge in that moment? We talked about the December 23 attack on the Iran-backed militias that were in Iraq. And everything from this White House was absent. It was like they closed the doors. That was during the time the defense secretary at the time, Lloyd Austin, was going through his prostate cancer treatment. And ultimately, at the beginning of the following year, just days later, January 1st of 24, he's under the knife and apparently hasn't made it known. Nobody really knew it. He says his second in command knew it. And we were asking on that attack who was in charge. Well, think about the exit and keep in mind how long the drawdown leading to that ultimate botched exit of Afghanistan in those final days took and what happened. In that moment, when planes were taking off with people hanging off of them and American service members were dying, who was in charge? Who was making those decisions? It's supposed to be the commander-in-chief in a situation like that. Was it? Was somebody else taking charge without having the authority?
Yeah.
All of these questions are in play. We lost American lives and now created a terrorism superstate that is Afghanistan and is a present and future danger to all Americans and free people. Did that happen because somebody else was running the show?
Yep. That he didn't have any cognitive ability to understand the situation that was going on because his mind couldn't handle it. Is that the other possibility? When it happened,
or was
remember,
it flat out incompetence, which could be the case,
or was it a lie?
Was it an entire? Yeah,
was it a lie?
Yeah,
or was his cognitive ability so bad he didn't even know what his own generals were saying to him?
Right.
We'll have that audio coming up next.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. You know, this was brought up by Kayleigh McEnany yesterday on, I believe it was yesterday. I don't know. It could have been the day before on Fox News. And I never thought about this. And it was something that you and I has always remained in our brains. And it was, leaving Afghanistan and Biden coming out and publicly. And I think he said it more than once. I think he said it multiple times that no general told him that he should be leaving troops in Afghanistan.
Right.
None.
Right.
Nobody told him that.
Right.
We found out everybody told him that.
Yep.
And we went, wow, he lied to the American people about what the generals told him.
Mm-hmm.
She's trying to make the case, maybe it wasn't a lie. Maybe he didn't know.
Maybe, in fact, maybe a number of his lies over the years.
Right.
Because we've asked, why in the world would you make up a bizarre lie like this on a couple of them, more than a couple of them, along the way? And the more bizarre they were, now the more you have to question what was going on with his cognitive skills.
Well, we also remember that when the generals were testifying and they all came out, no, we said 2,500 troops and keep the air base. No, we said 2,500 troops, all across the board, every single one of them. There wasn't one that said, no, we advised him to leave. Not one general.
Right.
And there was nothing from the White House on it.
Mm-mm.
And we thought the Republicans should have made a bigger deal of it.
Mm-hmm.
My God, you just caught him in the lie. This is a lie. This is a lie that helped cause the deaths of 13 service people.
Yeah.
You need to be making a lot. And it was almost as if, it's no big deal. Biden lies about everything.
Right.
It was not the story that we believe it could have been if the Republicans pushed it. But here she is talking about it.
I have seen people say, why are we going back in time? Very important we go back in time. And here's why. It occurred to me yesterday that there was a moment in the presidency where a lot of people said Joe Biden lied. And it was when he did an interview with George Stephanopoulos. And he said he could not recall anyone telling him to leave 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. He could not recall, and everyone called it a lie. But I think there are new questions today as to whether he truly could not recall what generals were telling him. And I want to play what the generals said they told him, and then what Joe Biden told the nation with the renewed context of his memory.
I recommended that we maintain 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. And I also recommended earlier in the fall of 2020 that we maintain 4,500 at that time. I also have a view that the withdrawal of those forces would lead inevitably to the collapse of the Afghan military forces and eventually the Afghan government.
General Milley, I assume you agree with that in terms of the recommendation of 2,500?
What I said in my opening statement and the memoranda that I wrote back in the fall of 2020 remained consistent, and I do agree with that.
Your top military advisors warned against withdrawing on this timeline. They wanted you to keep about 2,500 troops.
No, they didn't. It was split. That wasn't true. That wasn't true.
They didn't tell you that they wanted troops to stay?
No, not in terms of whether we were going to get out in a time frame, all troops. They didn't argue against that. No one said that to me that I can recall.
13 people, heroes, died at the Abbey Gate, and I have a lot of new questions about what happened that day.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
Yep. Well, because especially on that day, as we have said, for millions of us who are caretakers and have family members going through those cognitive issues, we know there are good days and there are very bad days.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that seemed to be a good day because he was very, very, very clear and blunt.
Well, you can have even good moments and bad moments.
Well, you can have good moments and not remember what you said.
Exactly. We had a family member who was asked what year it is. The answer was 1964. And then just moments later, who's the current president? This is the type of questions you ask when you're measuring cognitive skills. Quite unfortunately, it's part of the process. And the answer to the second question, who is the current president, she said, unfortunately, Joe Biden. But her first answer was it's 1964. You know, these are...
This is when Joe Biden was president.
And it was during Joe Biden's presidency. And the few of us who were in the room, of course, laughed at that second answer because she rolled her eyes. But the reason it's important and the reason that we, all of us family caretakers know this and professional caretakers know this is because of the nature of cognitive issues, the in and out moments, not just days, that go good and bad. So let's go back to that day. That final day in Afghanistan. Who was in charge? Americans died on that day, and it's important to know who was making the calls. It's important to know if indeed he was saying things in a situation room, whether or not he had the mental wherewithal. You can get to the bottom of that by asking people that were in the room with him. I suspect we'll never get to the bottom of it. But by God, we should try.
Well, I mean, that should be one of the questions. If they're going to get all of his former aides, they're going to subpoena them to all testify on this, and I think that is going to happen. Comer said that is going to happen.
Yep.
You're going to have the oversight committee bring in all of his top aides.
I can hear some of the answers now. You're right. By the way, all of that, has to play out. But it's funny while I'm thinking that I can hear some of his top aides going, well, we can't discuss the nature of any discussions that were going on during a military action and blah, blah. No. Assessment of whether or not you believe in that moment he had the wherewithal to make decisions.
That'll make it worse, though, for them if they do that. If they
of course.
In this case, they should also bring in a couple of the generals to testify on that, too.
Yep. And that process during that entire summer, remember that, when his top general, who was the top general for that entire operation,
pulled out,
we said, wait a minute. That is not the military way. That is not the nature of somebody who serves at that level, what does it tell you? There's a massive conflict between the general and the commander-in-chief.
And that's why, again, I don't know what it is. She gave me reason to pause, but because of that happened months before they testified, or before, or then maybe it was a month and a half, 2 months before he lied about it. Biden lied about it. That's why I tend to think Biden lied, is because the general in charge of Afghanistan left before they withdrew. And I believe he left for a reason. He left because he disagreed. He knew what was going to happen.
Right.
That's why still, if you're asking me which one do I think has more credibility, his cognitive abilities, it could be his cognitive abilities.
Well, it doesn't, and it also doesn't have to be either or.
It could be a combination.
Well,
of both.
because
That's a great point.
let's be clear. Joe Biden, without cognitive issues, was highly incompetent as commander-in-chief.
Yes.
He may have been, for the Democrats for years, a popular senator, which eventually got him, to the point of being selected as the VP. But he never had to govern.
Who said he was wrong on every foreign policy position ever?
Oh, who was that? I forget who said that, but when they said it, it just kind of made a really loud thud, like, oh my gosh, that's true. Because he was highly incompetent, because he had never been in the position, in fact, of having to govern, not as VP for Obama, and until January of 2021, when he was sworn in as president, he wasn't tested in terms of governance.
Robert Gates, former defense secretary,
yeah,
said that.
Well, and it's true. So we do have to include all of the above. I suspect what you'll hear in the answers will be, well, I'm not qualified to tell you, or I didn't detect any issues. I didn't notice anything out of the ordinary. Because here's the thing. On a number of the lies over the years, all of us looked at it and said, well, he's lying. We know he's lying. He's telling lies. We know he's... Well, now we're including the possibility of him maybe in some of those cases not lying, but instead having a mental lapse for whatever reason. Well, you have to include the possibility of both. One of the things that happens with somebody who is a pathological liar for all of their lives, even if they never get to the point of having any mental or cognitive issues, they start believing the lies they've been telling for years. Liberal media group, I forget who it was, Washington Post, New York Times, or one of them, wrote at one point the bizarre set of lies that Biden has been telling for years.
Well, remember the study that was done that people that are pathological liars and make up stuff all the time, that what George Costanza said
you believe it,
actually becomes true. That people, if they lie about their past, will actually come to believe that what never happened, which, again, if you don't remember the George Costanza line to Jerry Seinfeld, Jerry, it's not a lie if you believe it.
It's why I'm so angry that I'm not part of the Hall of Fame with Aerosmith.
Exactly.
The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame should have invited me up there, and it's not because I believe it. But if you think about it, throughout the years and the older you get, and keep in mind, you're lying for a living, and you're lying in public to the public all the time.
That's your job.
That's your job.
In your mind, that's your job.
That's your job. It's, again, when you do that, at some point you're going to start believing. Ron and Alan, get Corn Pop on the phone. He can tell us this. He'll tell us.
Well, remember, Robert Gates, who said Joe Biden's been wrong on every single foreign policy opinion that he's ever had,
right.
served he was defense secretary under Bush, and then Obama kept him, and Obama, remembered his retirement, gave him the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Yeah, right.
So they both liked him. He served under Obama and said Joe Biden has been wrong on every single foreign policy instinct or opinion that he's ever had.
Yep.
So, again, it could be, I like what you said, it's not one or the other.
It's not either or.
It could be both.
It could be a combination of all the above.
He's a pathological liar, and his cognitive abilities also.
And his incompetence.
And his incompetence, yeah. 866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Coming up following the top of the hour, the latest on the Supreme Court orders the Maine House to restore the vote of the state lawmaker Laurel Libby. She's the one that came out, and was that the high jumper?
Was the athlete the high jumper? I got to go back and review on that.
Yeah, it was the one
it was
male,
a trans athlete. Yeah,
the one athlete, and she said it was wrong, and said his name, and his name was already out there in the public. It was there. People had said it, but they censured her and said, you cannot vote.
Yeah.
You cannot be here. You cannot speak. You cannot vote. And the Supreme Court said, sorry, you can't do that. Now, the one thing about it is it was 7-2, and Justice Jackson said, well, there were no votes up that she was going to vote on that would have changed any of the votes. I don't know how she knew that.
Right.
But the fact is, shouldn't Justice Jackson be recusing herself from any radical transgender movement case because she does not know what a woman is?
Right. It was a pole vault competition.
Pole vault, okay.
Yeah.
If you don't know what a woman is, so it's a high jump with a pole. If you
a high jump with assistance.
If you don't know what a woman is, how can you possibly not recuse yourself from a situation that deals with women claiming they're discriminated against?
Right.
And you say you don't know what a woman is.
And by the way, Representative Libby had a right to that vote, whether it would change the actual outcome or not.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it was.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning.
We want to be the first to wish you a Merry Christmas.
Okay.
We probably are. We're first.
We did it in May.
Yeah. Highly efficient.
All right.
Yeah.
So the Supreme Court orders the Maine House to restore the vote of state lawmaker Laurel Libby. The majority did not explain its reasoning, as is typical on the court's emergency docket.
Yeah.
Jackson, though, Justice Jackson, for her part, said the case doesn't seem to be an emergency needing attention from the justices now, since there's no significant upcoming votes where her vote could change the outcome.
doesn't matter. She has a right to represent her constituents.
Absolutely. It's an emergency when they tell you you can't vote because of something you said.
I mean, such a liberal answer. It's not going to change anything.
Now, we have said, though, Jackson acknowledged, though, that the case raises many difficult questions and Libby may ultimately win. She's going to win.
Yeah.
She's going to win the case.
Yeah, she'll win.
For God's sake, she's going to win.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's a complete ridiculous case from the beginning, but as we said before, and is there any flaw to our argument here? I don't believe there is. We said this during the confirmation hearings and severely criticized Republicans for not bluntly stating that makes you unqualified to be a Supreme Court justice.
Yep.
If you cannot define what a woman is, how can you possibly rule on any issue concerning women? You don't know what they are.
By the way, too, we'll add to it, you had 2 liberal female justices rule that it wasn't important for a female lawmaker to regain voting power for criticizing a man.
And we didn't discuss this. You don't even know the audio that I have right now to play that backs up exactly what you said from Riley Gaines interviewing Laurel Libby.
We love Riley Gaines.
I'm telling you, our mind. Well, listen to this because she must be listening because it said exactly what we have said on a number of fronts. Here we go. Here's part of the interview.
I told Speaker Fecteau the night that I was censured, we had a meeting prior to that censure, prior to when I stood in front of him in the House chamber. And I ended the meeting telling him, Speaker, you're going to go down in history as the man who silenced a woman for speaking up for girls. And I think it's so critical that those of us in positions, theoretically at least, of power, do speak up for the girls, for those who are having their rights taken away. We shouldn't expect them to do that if we won't.
Wow. That statement is so powerful. And I think the general public has got the picture for a long time and is certainly, again, becoming more bold and saying it out loud. But what you just said, you are going to go down on the wrong side of history for silencing a woman for defending women. That is the message that needs to be on these ads, these campaigns, these commercials against these Democrats. Again, I hate to make it partisan like that because it really shouldn't be a partisan issue, but unfortunately, that's the reality of it. It has almost entirely fallen on party lines. That is the message that needs to be played on these commercials when they're running in 2026, 2028, whatever the term is, time and time again, 24/7, every single TV. That's the message that needs to be pushed out.
And she's right.
Yep. And on top of that, again, you can add to it now the not only when she was talking about the speaker going down in history as a male who's trying to silence the voice of a woman, of a female lawmaker for standing up for women. You have 2 female justices saying her votes aren't important.
Well, the thing is, the athlete was well known. The name was well known because he won, and so his name was in the public arena.
Yep.
Because she mentioned his name, they said she put his life at jeopardy. They put the student at risk. It was out there to begin with. It was public knowledge to begin with, and you need to apologize for it. She goes, I'm not going to apologize for anything.
Right.
It was in the public domain.
Promoted.
It was well known who this person was.
Right.
Media had reported everything else. I didn't do anything. I didn't threaten the student.
Right.
I simply said biological men playing against biological women is wrong. I won't apologize for telling the truth. And that's when they said, okay, we're going to censure you. You cannot speak and you cannot vote for your constituents. That is an emergency when that happens in a state legislature. For the Supreme Court to look at.
Yep.
It should have been on the emergency docket, and the right decision was made. But I'll say it again. Now, we all know there were 2 points that we made when Justice Jackson was in her nomination hearings. two points that we made when she said she could not define what a woman is. There are two things there. Either way, whatever argument she had to defend herself makes her unqualified to serve as a Supreme Court justice, as we have stated. Nobody has ever attempted to argue this with us because you can't. Number one, she doesn't know what a woman is. If she truly does not know what a woman is, if she doesn't know what she is, then she has no business being on the Supreme Court and ruling on any issue that involves any type of women's rights at all.
Right.
If you can't identify what you are standing judgment over, you can't stand judgment. You need to recuse yourself from every one of those issues out there. The other point is, if she does know what a woman is, which I believe she does, and she lied under oath, she should not be a Supreme Court justice. Either way, she was wrong.
Yep, it really is. I don't know where they go from here, except more of the same for the left on the liberal transgender movement. They're not going to give up on this. They're not going to quit. Yet they lose the issue all day. Many of them believe it's a left versus right issue and that they're only going to war politically with the opposition, with the right. The fact of the matter is, you're going to war with the parents, as we've been saying all along. The parents of the female students who want to compete fairly with other female students the way it's supposed to be. And yet the left wants to celebrate men dominating women in women's sports. They say their interpretation of Title IX, it is the end of Title IX if it were to continue and they were to win this whole thing, which I don't think they're going to. Because if any person can belong to a protected class, as outlined by the Civil Rights Act, simply by saying so, then there are no protected classes. It means anyone can belong to any protected class simply by saying so, and you may say that's ridiculous. Tell it to the left.
And as we all know, it was Obama that started this entire thing at the end of in his second term.
Right.
And remember, it became the whole thing that gender is a social construct.
Yes.
Which again is ridiculous. We follow the evolution of the argument. And the evolution of the argument was, well, there's a difference between gender and sex. And so somebody's saying that's how they feel. Okay, you may feel it, and that's fine. What does that mean? Because you feel it, why should you be able to expose yourself to a biological woman?
Right.
If you feel it, why does that mean that you should be able to compete against women?
Right.
Because what you're saying at that point is there's no difference. It's not gender. Because that's what we were told. Gender and sex are two different things. And then as it kept moving forward, then gender and sex became the same thing. And when they try to use the argument today, it's like, didn't you get the talking points?
Right.
The talking points is gender is sex, because if gender isn't sex, then you can't justify a biological male competing against a biological female. They have to be one they would have to be, if you're going to make, if you're trying to make the argument that they're separate, you can't do that and say men should be competing against women in sports.
Yeah, right.
That's the bottom line. And they know that. But the argument became whatever gets us through the next step. And then if we have to change it and move 180 degrees in a different direction, that's fine.
Right.
Which then comes to the point, what the hell do you really believe, except the fact that you're a misogynist and wish to threaten women?
Yeah.
What is it? And Libby made a great point. where she said, I went up to the male speaker and said, you just told a woman to shut up.
Right.
And think about this. No Democrat woman came out to her defense.
Right.
They told her to shut up, and you're going to lose your right to vote in the legislature as a woman because you're standing up for women.
Well, 2 female justices at the Supreme Court said her vote didn't matter.
Right. I mean, you just can't. You can't make this stuff up.
Insane.
Well, you could make it up, but we're not.
You don't have to.
You don't have to make it up.
You don't have to make this stuff up.
It's really happening.
Yeah. It's actually going on.
Yeah.
That's Dusty Slade, great comedian, has a line about, you can't make that up. And he said, I think you can. It's called a lie. Love Dusty Slade. But it's, it's this weird approach, bizarre approach that they don't, for some reason, they just don't see. Is there going to be a breaking point on this issue specifically, on the liberal transgender movement? Think Jon Stewart, right, on Colbert's show on CBS, breaking down the whole lab leak theory, right? That was really kind of the breaking point where people felt like they had more permission on the left to talk about the lab leak theory. How much is driving right now? How much of the mob mentality from the radicals is driving this to the point that people are silent, as you just mentioned? No one came to Libby's defense. Quite often we see this where, if not for Riley Gaines and other women, where's the march? Where in the hell is the march? Why is it that the majority of women aren't furious over this whole thing right now?
Well, I mean, they talked about it. Riley Gaines and Representative Libby talked about it. They said it's important that women come out and say this stuff. You and I, we go back over 10 years talking about the radical transgender movement, and we stated a number of times we really never got any correspondence from women saying, yeah, this is great. And we said, we're 2 guys talking about it when nobody else was talking about it. We said where it was going to lead. That was, by the way, we don't make a lot of predictions. That was such a logical prediction, though. We said if the radical transgender movement continues, it will destroy liberal feminism. And it did.
Yep.
And we made that prediction, over 10 years ago?
Yeah.
But we said it's really incredible that women are so silent. And we said, don't they care, or do they feel they'll be threatened because of it?
I think it's probably a combination of both. Again, getting back to my earlier comment about the power of the mob mentality from the radical left, which we've seen on many issues control how people talk or don't talk at all. And that same side, the radicals, scream, silence is violence. Well, my gosh. If you can't speak up about this, then tell me what's going on. What is the actual threat? People are going to come after you? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking a legitimate question. Why aren't we hearing from more women? I have to believe that many women are greatly concerned, and not just on the right. We hear from women on the right. You see them being vocal. Women on the left
now
are
they weren't 10 years ago.
Oh, no. Well, nobody was.
Yeah, nobody was. In fact, what we got was, guys, this isn't going to go anywhere. And we said, yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll never forget the Charlotte Observer editorial.
Yeah.
Girls need to get used to men's genitalia.
Right.
This is like this is like the civil rights movement.
Right.
Like you have to get used to a black person at the restaurant counter. You need. I mean, good God, who sat in a meeting and came up with that analogy?
Oh my gosh!
And just the same way that a white person would have to get used to a black person at the restaurant counter, a girl needs to be comfortable with male genitalia being exposed to them.
Yeah. Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
That's how it is now.
Right. By the way, the one positive is that in November of 24, this was the driving women's issue politically, not abortion.
Yep.
That is definitely a positive sign.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on speed and space management. Due to safety concerns, many motor carriers have policies that limit or prohibit the use of cruise control. If your motor carrier does allow you to use cruise control, you should only use it in good driving conditions during daylight hours and on roads that have light traffic, few curves or hills, and a consistent speed limit. Never use cruise control when operating in adverse driving conditions, including wet, icy, or slippery roads, during rush hour in heavy traffic or on congested highways, at night, or when you're tired or fatigued. During all of these driving scenarios, you want to be controlling and adjusting your speed as you drive instead of having to suddenly brake if you encounter an obstacle. In the case of a slippery road surface, you want to be able to slow your vehicle by not accelerating instead of using the brakes whenever possible. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, the reason that Republicans will not complain about the fact that the debt is drastically increased over 10 years by the Republican bill. CNN did the polling yesterday. We'll have it for you. Way more Republicans want a tax cut, even if it raises a deficit, than the general public. That's why.
Yeah.
And part of it's because, you want, with inflation and everything else, that's economics. You're looking out for your own self-interest, and your own self-interest is what you can get right now. And so people claim, I saw one Republican representative, we all care about the debt. Well, you may care about it. It's not the priority. Priority is your own personal economics before the debt.
Yeah.
So that didn't used to be the case with the Republican Party.
Right.
When it came to debt. But 74% of the GOP says cut taxes even if the deficit increases. Overall, 60%. In 96, 23% of the public agreed with that.
They live the life. They walk the walk. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Testifying before the Senate yesterday, Kristi Noem for Homeland Security. Yeah. Rand Paul, where are we spending our money? You ready?
All right.
Nobody but Rand Paul would bring this up. Okay, here we go. I love this. Here we go.
With regard to the drones and all the preparatory work that DHS does and the government does for the NFL and for FIFA, does the NFL pay DHS for the work you do?
Boy, not to my knowledge. I will.
Well, I mean, here's my point. The NFL makes billions of dollars. We're $2 trillion in the hole. I don't care if government shares their technology and government helps out the World Cup. They ought to pay.
Yeah.
People are paying hundreds of dollars for tickets. I mean, thousands of dollars for the NFL, for Super Bowl and things. They're also paying for FIFA. And so these people ought to pay. And so I'm one holding up these authorizations, and I'll let them go forward. but I want people to pay. I mean, it's ridiculous that the average taxpayer who could never afford to go to an NFL Super Bowl has got to pay for their security. Should the government help? If we have technology they don't, perhaps. But they ought to pay. So NFL, FIFA, I think they ought to pay. And we'll be insisting on trying to put language in that. If you're a for-profit entity and the government's helping you, you ought to pay for it.
Yeah, but that's not her problem. She doesn't make the decision on that. You do, Senator Paul.
Right.
You make the decision, and you just said,
yep,
I'll let the legislation go through, but I'll complain about it. Well, that doesn't solve the problem. Why are you bringing it up to her if you're stating, I don't want the NFL and I don't want FIFA getting, all taxpayer-funded security for their big events? They should pay. But I'll let the legislation go through when it comes up, and I need to make this clear to you that it shouldn't be happening, but I'll allow it to happen even though I'm against it. Not a really strong, blunt comment from Senator Paul.
The GOP should consider raising taxes on the upper end to 40%. It probably wouldn't work for them politically, so they shouldn't do it. But if they did, I wouldn't mind.
That was Trump last week. It's like but where we talk about that, the reason that the Republican, getting back to the budget here, the reason that Republicans can pass this budget and not talk about, they talk about the tax cuts. I forgot who it was. Was it the OMB director was out yesterday saying, my gosh, this is just this savings reform. I mean, we're talking about $1.6 trillion. That's over double of what we did in 1997, adjusted for inflation. $1.6 trillion in cuts. Yeah, but you're spending it all and more. That's the only thing that matters, right?
Yep.
Wrong. It doesn't matter to the vast majority of Republicans. And we've stated this before. The Republicans are not cutting because the Republican Party does not wish them to cut. And I know that one representative got upset about it. I saw it yesterday. I just was going through, I don't even know what channel it was on. I was going through one of my streaming channels. It's like, what are you talking about? The public wants cuts. We need to have cuts. No, they don't. It's not their first priority. They may say they want cuts, but is it the first priority? No. Tax cuts are. Actual cuts to the budget? No. Here's Harry Enton from the latest CNN poll. Here we go.
Yeah, to quote Stephen A. Smith, they don't care. They don't care about those deficits. What are we talking about here? All right, let's take a look. Cut taxes, even if the deficit increases. Look at this. 60% overall say, cut those taxes, baby. What about Republicans? They're the ones who are supposedly so concerned over the deficit. But even there, 74% say cut taxes, even if the deficit increases. Both overall and Republicans, they don't care. They don't care. In fact, the only ones who do seem to care are, in fact, Democrats. 55% of Democrats are opposed to cutting taxes if the deficit increases. But when it comes to Republicans, we're talking 3/4. The overall public, 3/5. They don't care. They say cut those taxes, even if the deficit increases.
It's interesting because I've been around this politics game for a long, long time. And there are people in this business who will tell you when push comes to shove, voters never really care about deficits. But the polls and the data here show something a little different.
Yeah, this was something I think that came to a little bit of a surprise to my dear friend standing on the other side of your screen, Mr. Berman. Take a look here. Okay, cut taxes even if the deficit increases. Now, it's that 60% we spoke about. But back in 1996, the real last time where there really was a movement to bring that deficit down, bring that debt down, it was just 23% who said cut taxes even if the deficit increases. So we've nearly seen a tripling, far more than doubling of the percentage of Americans who say that we should cut those taxes even if the deficit increases. And that's where we're standing right now, basically, amongst the American public, and why I think that this movement to basically try and, close down Trump's big, beautiful bill by making the argument that the deficit would increase, why will basically probably go nowhere at the end of the day, because the bottom line is voters overall and Republican voters especially say we want to cut those taxes even if the deficit increases, which is far, far different from where we were back in 1996 when, of course, Bill Clinton was president and we had a Republican House and a Republican Senate really trying to bring that deficit down.
Well, you bring up Clinton. You know, I was alive during the Clinton presidency. You barely so. And they actually had a budget surplus for like a minute there. But
all right, but they get it. But the polling is interesting. By the way, the Democrats are only against more spending because Trump's in power. We know that would be reversed. That's all a Trump thing. And
right.
So we know that. That's a Trump thing. That's not that Democrats have become fiscal conservatives.
Right, exactly.
That's not at all. Because they can't anything, even if you see the attacks from the Democrats that the Republicans wish to cut anything, even if it has no effect, they lie that it has an effect. We've seen the line over the last couple of weeks, especially when it comes to Medicaid and things like that. But when you have a Republican Party that cannot stop able-bodied males, really can't put a strict work requirement for able-bodied males before they collect Medicaid, then your party has gone in the complete opposite direction.
That's the whole thing. It's something that would have been a no-brainer at one point. But when your party's going further and further left on fiscal issues, why do we want to require that? That would be hard. It would require us to do things and stuff. I just don't get the lack of motivation. Wait a minute. I do. The phones aren't ringing.
Yeah,
the phones aren't ringing.
And they do their internal polls that everybody says they care about the deficit, but as I said before we even played the audio cut at the bottom of the hour, it's simple economics.
Right.
I'm not surprised by it because it's simple economics, especially with the inflation that people have seen over the past few years. And the inflation has been so bad, and it's still bad now. Even though it's lower, remember, the inflation is compounded by everything that we've seen over the last 5 years. People care about their own situation first. The future be damned. I can't afford to do anything. You see some of the polling out there, people, the amount of money that they have to, in an emergency is nothing. The majority of the American public can't get access to $500 to $1,000 that they have for savings or living paycheck to paycheck. So, of course, I'm not surprised. That's simple economics. And for the Democrats, you go, well, what about the Democrats? 55% say they don't want tax cuts if it's going to increase the budget. Well, that's TDS because we know the opposite is true when they're in power.
Exactly.
We know the complete opposite is in, and the history shows it. And the spending of the Biden administration, there was no objection at all from one Democrat ever for all the spending of the Biden administration. So
right.
They're lying. Unfortunately, though, when you see the polling, it means that, again, there is no concern about the debt. People will say it, but it's not a priority. And if it's not a priority, we're never going to get anything done. And that's why the Republicans don't feel any pressure at all, which means I think you'll see that what you'll see here is now they know the polling. They've done their own internal polling. That's why they're making more inroads with the pro-SALT people that do everything that any Republican has ever used to hate completely, which is bail out the blue states and their bad fiscal policies by having a huge, high SALT tax deduction so they don't pay their fair share of taxes because of their irresponsible nature, and that tax burden is put on other people in other low-tax states that are actually living within their means and trying to be fiscally responsible. That used to be something that Republicans would go crazy about. Now, whatever. They are conceding to them, the Republican leadership, it seems right now, than they are to anything that the tax cutters want. Excuse me, not the tax cutters, excuse me, the overall, because they're for the tax cuts. What they're for is not the increased spending. They want cuts in other areas, and they especially want cuts in Medicaid for the money that's being wasted. And right now you see the Republican leadership more, I think, amenable with the pro-SALT people because they know.
Yeah.
They know. They know the Republican Party is not a party that cares about the deficit anymore like they used to.
Yep.
And it's that simple, and the polling shows so.
It's why you hear the blah, blah, blah. I mean, Johnson sounds, when you listen between the lines, just like John Boehner. We don't like messy. It's, if you listen to what's going on, it's all cherry picking. Everybody gets something. Everybody gets a little something. Well, not everybody. No, they don't. Gary's still going to have to pay taxes on his Social Security. And damn it, that's wrong. Did I read that the way I was supposed to?
Yes, you did.
All right,
you got it completely correct.
Good.
You read it correct. You read my script
I put
correctly.
some passion in it, too. I just drank some caffeine. So
Didn't I have exclamation marks? I'm
yeah,
sorry.
There were like 19.
Okay.
The printer ran out of ink after the last 20 exclamation points.
And it wasn't, and like I said, the polling shows, and like I said, they have the 96 poll, and that's, from really 89 to 96 when, you had the Republican Congress with Newt Gingrich really come in. They're the ones that did it. Believe it or not, who crunched the numbers in it was John Kasich way back then.
Yep.
It was John Kasich who crunched the numbers in order to balance the budget. And so from 89, when I first became a talk show host, and Republicans were so anti where the debt was going. I mean, they were incredibly, I wish they had the polling overall for Republicans when it came to the debt back then as compared to now. And it's unfortunate because you have now Republicans that are just as fiscally liberal. When you see across the board a lot of the things, the reason that Josh Hawley and even Trump can promote price controls on things.
Yep. Yeah.
Is because you have a party which is becoming very culturally conservative and much more fiscally socialist, the Republican Party. That's where they're going. That's just, it's obvious. That's where it's a huge change from where it used to be. You and I have remained consistent in our political beliefs all along.
Yeah, right.
But the reason that they're not attempting to appease conservatives like us is they believe that the Republican Party is no longer fiscally, this is the leadership of the Republican Party. By the polling and everything they see that the public, the Republican Party, the voter for the Republican Party is no longer fiscally conservative.
Right, yeah.
There's no other reason.
Right.
866-90-RED-I.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today. Why? Because our show ends in an hour. And after our show ends, our podcast begins. Why? Our podcast is simply a recording of the show. And after the show is over, boom, we have it in. So if you can't listen to the entire show, from midnight to 5 a.m., you can listen to whatever parts you want after the show is done. And if for some reason you can't listen to one of our great radio stations overnight, which you should, that is the preferred method, but if for some reason you can't, we stream all 5 hours live on our Red Eye Radio app.
And thank you.
So, yep. So that's the, we'll see. I didn't see any developments overnight. Did any committee or anything, did the budget committee vote on this? I don't think they did.
I didn't see anywhere where the budget committee voted on it.
I haven't checked anything in the last couple of hours.
Right,
So
yeah.
like thehill.com would have it. But we'll have the latest on that and a whole bunch more coming up following the top of the hour. Yeah, it's still the same thing. Johnson, SALT Republicans, 0 in on critical agreement. So.
Yeah.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.